Good morning, everyone. Guten Morgen. Buona dimineața. Nowadays, optimization of SAP platforms by leveraging AI plays a key role to acquire or maintain leadership, especially in times of crisis like with COVID-19. From this, we learned that many factors could change quickly. Therefore, it is crucial to anchor sustainability for the post-pandemic period. In this context, Sandy, Nick, and I will discuss today the Enterprise Digital Assistant Technology, in short EDA. This being said, I welcome you to today's webinar, Turbocharging Your SAP Platforms Through the Power of AI. My name is Jerry Joseph, and I'm Digital Strategist at Stefanini, working from Germany. Now, before handing over the word to my friends, I would like to inform you about the timing of this webinar. We will discuss for 30 minutes about EDAs. During this part, we invite you to post questions in the chat window. We will pick them up during the 15 minutes Q&A session right after the discussion. Nick, would you be so kind and take over?
Thanks, Jerry. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Nick. I'm responsible for managing some of our sort of larger strategic clients in Europe. I'm based in Cologne in Germany. I've been with Stefanini for 22 years and I've had a variety of different roles and responsibilities. And it's really great to be on this discussion, and we look forward to having some interesting questions from you about the topics that we discuss. Sandy, over to you.
Hey guys, my name is Sandy Kumar. If you want the tough Indian name, my name is Yesasvi Sankara. If you want to do a tongue twister early morning, I'm the SAP Practice Director responsible for SAP services for Stefanini. In general, I get engaged globally for multiple accounts when ERP or any ERP systems are engaged. So I think today's conversation, if I had to move forward. All right, so see, the primary objective of today's presentation, what we are trying to achieve is to establish what it means to break the barriers which have been inherently defined in traditional AMS support models. See, the traditional AMS support models primarily are driven based off SLAs, right? Service level agreements. These service level agreements are traditionally based off two main KPIs, either how fast do you respond, how fast do you fix the incident. And generally, these SLA based AMS support models are old school currently when you're looking at the new age technologies which are coming in, and they become outdated on what is expected or a business user anticipates that the application should do. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is primarily when you have an application and an application fails or prevents a user from performing his business function, typically the business user then has an incident which he would trigger, and he would either reach out to help desk, and the help desk would then cascade it through the ITIL ticket lifecycle process and reach a resolution through IT. So the very important aspect there which you guys need to, the important aspect which you need to primarily understand here is IT is always engaged after the fact, which means the incident has to be triggered in the system before any IT agent or any value addition can be provided to the business user. So what it inherently means is the business user's productivity would already be affected before IT can even jump into the mix. So one of the tools in the new age technology of migrating from traditional OLTP systems to new age is being able to migrate from a application centric, which is transaction processing, to cognitive ERP platform. Cognitive ERP platforms have the ability to think and reason, and they can be user centric or persona centric. And one of the key tools which can help with this digitization endeavor is a digital assistant. And the key aspect of today's discussion is in reference to enterprise digital assistant and how it can help your enterprise systems have more productivity by engaging IT while the incident is happening, henceforth taking IT live. So there is no more calling help desk generate the incident. When there is an error when you're doing a front-end transactional activity, then that will fundamentally trigger a agent to pop up on your screen, and he or she, whichever avatar you end up choosing in your organization, can help you guide through that process. So this is a, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Sandy, to interrupt you. One of the questions that I get often is whereabouts the digital assistant should be located, or does it need to be in one place? Can it be in multiple locations? Will it only be in this discussion within the SAP system itself, or could it be co-located across an ITSM tool, a Microsoft Teams site? So what's your thought on that? Can it be co-located in multiple places?
Absolutely. So the beauty of a digital assistant concept is the digital assistant is agnostic of where and what application it needs to support or where it needs to sit. So the digital assistant can be set up on the cloud, and it can call the services to all these applications, or it can be set up on premise within your data center. And because if you have any data sensitivity requirements, or you are ITAR compliant like in the United States, or GDPR compliant, things along those lines, which government sensitive data, then they can be set up on premise as well. But fundamentally, the key differentiator with the digital assistant is its 360-degree of coverage. So it can support any of the applications, and it is agnostic of which application it can reach out to. So it can help harmonize your data across multiple applications. Even just within the ERP system of SAP, SAP itself has so many products. So it can help even connect all those products.
Okay, great.
All right, so as Nick mentioned, intelligent agents are the step one evolution which is being seen in the market right now. And as part of this evolution, one of the key things which is being highlighted is the need for a digital assistant. And the next stage of evolution, so to speak, would be on augmented and virtual reality. So the first stage of evolution is very much upon us. There are a lot of early adopters of this technology of having intelligent agents or touch-free delivery centers or touch-free IT kind of concept. So it's very useful from a futuristic growth perspective and changing overall from an SLA based model to experience level agreements, and how IT is perceived within the organization for us to make this necessary digital age change. This is another example of how much time a business user spends when you have an ERP system which is implemented in your environment. It's close to 25% of his time in a week is used for searching and collecting information. If you have a digital assistant who is available and who can get you that information faster, quicker, and obviously cheaper, then help you resolve and perform your everyday working function more effectively, can tell you when you're not following the exact standard operating procedures in your organization, or when you want to break those standard operating procedures and want to do an exception process. So any of those, all those can be helped with the enterprise digital assistant, henceforth the representation of the maze model. So a digital assistant can be 100% customized to your install, which is one of the very key aspects of having an enterprise digital assistant. So the way we have seen in our customer pool of whoever are exploring this and whoever have already implemented enterprise digital assistant concept, we generally classify the use cases of where and how a digital assistant can be used into two broad categories. One broad category is more on the functional side, one is on the technical side. The functional side of things is along the lines, like a good example, let's say you are a retail food chain industry segment customer, and your buyer wants to know what is the stock quantities. Instead of him having to go through each one of the bins, he can ask a question to the digital assistant, and digital assistant can tell him what is coming in, what is going out, and what the stock situation is. And it can help him perform functions with voice triggered events rather than having to log into the system and even do it. So it can trigger a transfer order within the system to move the inventory from one DC to another DC. Or it can be along the lines of a closing agent, where it can help customers close their books more effectively, and it can answer a CFO's questions, so to speak. Hey, can you give me a list of all the plants or the controllers who have closed on time? So it can be another purpose. So all these are more on the functional side of things. The big advantage when you do the functional side is IT truly becomes alive But the challenge with the functional side is there's no canned packaged product per se where you can just put and it's plug and play. It does not exist much on the functional side. Another very good use case which is more repeatable, if you're looking for something which is more repeatable and plug and play, is like master data maintenance. So a digital assistant can help do master data maintenance in your SAP systems. So that is another very good use case where one of the customers in the United States is already performing that POC. They are a polymer based company who manufacture polymers, and they are leveraging the digital assistant to further facilitate their master data management processes. So this is on the functional side where the IT can be made live. The business user can have live interaction, have real-time support, and the keyword is real-time support. And the more important is it can be configured, and it's literally make to order based off what your business rules and needs are. On the technical side is where more packaged tool sets already exist in the market, and they're fairly well evolved as well. On the technical side, like chatbots for IDOC monitoring or background job self-healing or RPA scripts. These kind of things are very good examples of, on the technical side, how a NOC or a network operation center can be made more productive, or how you can use workflow integration with a digital assistant, or how you can have an IT agent come live as soon as a production job fails and it tries to self-heal 3 times and it can follow a standard operating procedure to fix it and it still fails, then it can call in an IT agent. So it moves from more corrective maintenance to more preventive maintenance. What we have tried to do in this slide is at a high level try to represent different kind of use cases that can be thought about from a digital assistant value addition perspective. This is definitely not the comprehensive list of all the use cases. We have customers. The reason we have kind of chosen these use cases is because in our experience with our customer pool, a lot of these use cases were already leveraged by the customers. Henceforth, we have kind of tried to articulate it. But the digital assistant, like what Nick was asking the question, is it where it's very much a 360-degree coverage. So you can have your own use case where it will be most useful for your organization. A good example in one of the previous presentations which we're doing, the customer felt that the digital assistant might be useful for seeing if there can be more optimization on pricing when the product is being sold, so to speak. So if you're a retail company or a retail industry, optimization on pricing has a huge impact on your margin and how your margin can be improved. So when a user is buying and based on what his behavior is and things along those lines, if you're able to do dynamic pricing and be able to optimize the pricing, and the digital assistant can add value to the shopper to tell them and help them do their selection process, etc., then that's a huge differentiator. From a shopping experience perspective. So that's why the XLA concept, right? So these are all high level examples of where the digital assistant is very much useful. The outer parameter kind of still represents the KPIs, which kind of can be improved upon. As you can probably see, a lot of these are kind of classified into functional and technical area, and where you want to apply the digital assistant. Generally, in our experience, it's better to always start with one simple use case and see how it goes. Build your ROI, and once you implement one use case, that use case being successful acts as the change agent within your organization for being able to propagate the digital assistant for all the other areas as well. So this slide is kind of very key because this is very relevant for the current times which we are having with the whole pandemic situation globally, right? And how a digital assistant could be of value in COVID situation. Let's say, for example, you are a charity and you're a charitable organization, and as part of your charitable organization, your sponsors want to know whatever they have sponsored for COVID-19 research or outbreak or support, etc., where are my dollars going? So can a digital assistant can play the role of a self-help guy, show them where their money is going and how the money is being leveraged? Yes, it can answer questions, and it can be one of the customized experiences which the sponsor can have to see where his money is being spent, so to speak, because it's in a natural language. So he or she can ask the questions like exactly like if you have an iPhone, how a Siri would look like, or Alexa or Echo or Google. So any of these, all these use the same kind of technology to have that natural algorithm of natural language processing. So this is a very good example of COVID situation. Nick and Jerry, did you guys, I think you guys had a couple of examples which you wanted to highlight for this.
Yes, I have a question towards Nick. Nick, how can an EDA generally add value to a company in times like these with COVID-19?
Well, I mean, in our example, we use Sophie, which is the name we've given to our digital assistant, to really help us with the challenges I think a lot of people on this webinar had, right? We had a lot of people working in offices. We had to quickly put them into a home location, but obviously that came with a lot of complexity in terms of setting them up correctly with VPN. They obviously also had a lot of questions about COVID and how that impacts them on business travel. So what we did is we actually used Sophie to facilitate a lot of those questions with answers that obviously our internal HR teams have already programmed into Sophie's mind. But also we built in the workflows for VPN provisioning, so tokens and things like that people were struggling with, because obviously our internal service desk was inundated with requests and with calls. So we deflected those to Sophie to be able to deal with them a lot more efficiently whilst all of this chaos was going on about relocating people. And thankfully, it was a big success. We were able to relocate, I think, 2,500 people that were in our service desks, in our application delivery centers, to a home environment with zero disruption to the day-to-day operations. And thankfully, Sophie played a huge part in that. So it really helps reduce the employee downtime, increase productivity, and of course keeps the engine running within an organization. So Sandy, I mean, since COVID hit everybody, have you seen an increase in demand from your client base within SAP for EDAs to help facilitate some of that downtime?
Absolutely. So I can think of two very specific use cases during COVID era which digital assistant was being leveraged. One use case is onboarding of new contract workers, but everything being done virtually. So this is one use case where a digital assistant can help a new onboarded employee or a worker navigate the waters because he or she is not in a working premises anymore. This was one use case where it was leveraged. The second use case, incidentally, which is funny, so when you are doing everything virtually, even projects have to be implemented virtually. So Sophie can, in general, or a digital assistant for that matter, can in general also be used as a quality control person to see if the business workshops or the blueprinting workshops were being effective or not. So the blueprinting workshops, the way it was requested by one of the prospective customers, and this was a proof of concept which we were trying to do, is we were programming Sophie for a specific blueprinting workshop to have a specific checklist of things which it would make sure that the workshop captures or gets the information. And it also helps to do the quality control process for each one of the workshops. Have the documents been put in place? Did we cover the business process master list? Has a gap document been generated? You know, things along those lines. From a business flow monitoring perspective and workflow integration in virtual teams, it was quite useful to see how Sophie could be leveraged in that perspective, especially for automating some manual business tasks, where like the project manager could be able to say, hey, Sophie, can you please send an email to my team advising them that the deliverable for today is up. All he needs to do is just to chat it, put it in chat, and Sophie can generate an email or a workflow process to make sure it follows up with all the people and checks off all the checks and balances. Or it can even do as simple as setting up a meeting and making sure all the required attendees are being pulled in, because you can program Sophie to look at the project plan, so to speak.
Great.
So this slide is quite a key slide. The key word which I want to highlight is live transaction assistant. See, one of the beauties of using an SAP system is it has a front end, and you are going to be putting in information and you're expecting some output in real time. So like I mentioned before, traditionally when you put in the information, IT comes and gets engaged when something goes wrong or anything along those lines. But so with a tier 1 product, let's say like SAP, there's a lot of those error codes or repeat error message based off your ticket analysis, which we can identify on what the business user is having challenges with while transacting in the system. So let's say they're trying to enter a sales order. And when they're entering a sales order, they run across a pricing error. So generally what happens is they would save the order or have to create a incident in the ITSM tool, let's say like ServiceNow or something. It'll go to L1, L1 will transfer to L2, L2 will look at the priority, address it, call back, all this triage of process happens, correct? So independent of doing that, let's say the sales order gets entered and there is a specific error message. The error messages are all coded within SAP as part of standard SAP programming. So if any of those error messages get popped up, so to speak, we can have automatically a digital assistant come live onto the business user screen, so to speak, and help him guide on how to execute that sales order. So it can be along the lines of pointing him to a knowledge base article. It can be along the lines of showing him what are the solutions which it could find, or it can be along the lines of it can Google online and see if that error can be solved from a self-help perspective, or it can even take one step further and help the user generate the incident directly from that screen into your ITSM tool and even bring the IT agent live immediately. So the whole triage process and the customer response time, resolution time, all those goes out of the window. So it's no longer contingent on that. It is contingent on being able to help the business user live when he or she is having the challenge. So that's one value addition of a live transaction assistant. The second big value addition when you use obviously SAP systems, which everybody would understand, is the sheer complexity of the system, right? It's not that easy to use. The net promoter score for SAP is one of its biggest challenges. So a digital assistant can fundamentally have a persona based avatar, which can primarily help the business user perform his job function, and that digital assistant can be designed specifically to help him with his job function. So like a good example which I can think of, let's say you're taking an example of a buyer or a warehouse worker or a production supervisor. A digital assistant can be designed to help looking at all his, what are his key functions and how he interacts with the application, and be able to provide him support for that specific persona. So you can have a persona for your digital assistant for your warehouse worker and a completely different persona for an executive who is a CFO. So it can be completely different, but fundamentally from a technology perspective, it's all the same. So that's why it's
sorry to interrupt. So how long typically would it take to implement such a solution with a personalized persona-based EDA within a particular module within SAP from start to finish, just for like one POC? What's the typical time?
Generally, in our experience, we have seen it to be around 3 months or so. We have had some cases where it went up to 6 because of the complexity of the business process. But generally, 3 months is a fairly good estimation, assuming you have some kind of digital assistant technology or the infrastructure already set up. But if you go with the cloud solution, it can be even shorter or smaller, because then we are just working on the code, because setting up something on the cloud is fairly easy. So 3 months on an average is pretty good number. But more important than the 3 months, Nick, it would be whatever you ended up investing for setting up that digital assistant. All the customers who have embarked on this journey have gotten their return of investment within the same financial year. Wow. Within 1 year, you will be able to get your return of investment. So if you put in whatever money to put your digital assistant in, logically, you should have enough savings the digital assistant can generate that it makes it kind of literally paid off asset, and you can depreciate against that asset, literally. All right, so going to the next slide. This is regarding one of the questions Nick was earlier mentioning. on the ability of the digital assistant to be agnostic. Can it be installed for an overall enterprise? Answer is very much a resounding yes. A digital assistant is fundamentally needing to be enterprise centric, because a lot of the applications which are critical applications are enterprise level applications, which means there is not just one single source of truth. The information has to be gathered across multiple systems. So being able to have one single point of view by harmonizing your data quickly and providing proactive solutions is priceless, especially in environments which are quite big and in heterogeneous IT landscapes. So a digital assistant is like, I don't know how many of you are Lord of the Rings fans. It's like one ring to rule them all. So think of it along those lines, that one ring or digital assistants can have plugins or APIs into all those applications, and it can get any piece of information from any of your applications and provide intelligent self-service or intelligent user interaction so that the users can be way more productive. All right, so moving to the next slide. I think one of the key questions obviously we get asked a lot is, okay, is this all a lot of smoke? Is this, how much of it is realistic? If we had to embark on this journey, how would we do it? With our experience, we have kind of established a high level guideline of how we would go about doing a Sophie implementation or a digital assistant implementation for an enterprise in these main 5 steps. Generally, what we always recommend literally is pick your use case, and 50% of the battle for a successful EDA implementation is picking the right use case. If you pick something which resonates and is a burning problem within your business, then it is so much more easier to have the necessary traction against that use case to build a success case, and then using that success case as a change agent to be able to propagate the digital assistant across your enterprise. High level process perspective on what should be the best practice way to do a digital assistant implementation is kind of what is articulated here. It is very much necessary to do more agile implementation, especially for the first initial use cases, and more if you consider something more functional in nature, because functional use cases are not canned, because they need to have specific business rule framework, which would be more needing to be aligned between what your business rules or what are the key differentiators for your specific organization.
Sandy, I have a question.
Yep.
If a company decides to leverage the EDI technology, how can a strategy and an implementation roadmap look like? Should you start with small projects and then cascade into projects that are more complex, considering the ROI, of course?
Cannot stress on this enough. Start small. Always start small. Pick one use case. I can give you customers who have used Sophie for looking at EPA, Environmental Protection Agency's prediction forecasting for pollutants, as complicated as that, to primarily doing something as simple as password reset. So don't discount simple password reset and self-help either. But whatever is the use case you end up picking, please make sure it's a very clear, well-defined use case with an ROI, because you have to leverage that use case to propagate across the board the change which we are trying to achieve with the digital assistant, where you're. So in general, from a change management perspective, in this day and age, workforces generally are getting differentiated into 2 main slivers. One sliver is what is called as number 0 people, which is you call a help desk, and the first thing you want, even though somebody automated comes on, you will keep hitting number 0, because you want to get to a live agent as soon as possible. You don't want to have automated help. You are not interested in automated help. You would rather not have self-service. You want to talk to somebody live. So that is what is called as number 0 people. The number 0 people are slowly but steadily coming down. The new age workforce primarily wants to have self-help because they are way more technologically savvy than the previous generation workforces. So as they are more technologically savvy, they would like to be empowered and be able to access the information where they can solve the things faster. Like a simple example which we have noticed is our digital assistant is leveraged way more on chat than on voice, because chat, you're immediately available, they ping on chat, ask the question, get the information, take the self-help and move on. So in general, pick your use case, start small, have a very clear ROI. This does wonders. And I think going back to what Nick was also saying, it's a 360-degree coverage. So once you breach the low threshold with the smaller use case, making it a across the organization migration is pretty easy, because the success from the single use case can be leveraged as a change agent across the organization. At a high level, the successful EDA project definition is in our experience kind of getting split into two broad main categories. One is more on the technology space. What I mean by that is you pick a use case which is primarily on the new age technology trends, like for example, self-healing algorithms or RPA scripts, or how do you optimize a network operation center user, or how do you optimize background job running. Those are all technology trends perspective. And then we have the business needs perspective, which is where primarily when a business user is trying to perform a specific function, those are the main business needs which you're trying to fix. So if you are primarily somebody who in your organization is having problems with IT and your user maturity is having a lot of number zero people, which is the people who want to get to a live agent, we recommend that you go with more technology trends kind of a use case. If you have a user maturity which is a little bit different, which is primarily they want more self-service, self-help, they want to be advised or being able to navigate their own job situation, so to speak, then those are more business centric needs. And those kind of organization, like a good example would be supply chain challenges, things along those lines are more business centric needs. So organizations with that kind of a fabric or need are better off leveraging towards business needs. But whichever one which you end up going with is again going to be a key aspect when you first embark on a EDA project implementation. So we have always noticed that a project management is very much necessary to keep the scope tight and small. That way you can do a quick agile implementation and be done with it. All right, so I'm coming to the last slide. We are running a blog series which is having further use cases and examples on LinkedIn. After the webinar is over, the team would definitely share the deck as well as the blog series links, etc. If you guys are willing, it's on LinkedIn, so you can follow. There will be a 5-part blog series. I think 2 articles have already been posted. There will be 3 more articles with different use cases of which based on what we have seen in different customers. And this is where the industry is going, guys. So a traditional AMS support model, traditional IT, those are going to be irrelevant soon. It is expected that applications are cognitive in nature, they are self-healing in nature, and users get help live where they get experience level agreements, not service level agreements from IT. All right.
So thanks, Sandy. That was very interesting. I hope the attendees on this webinar also feel the same way. I know it was a very short amount of time to cover a lot of information. I just want to quickly, re-emphasize the most important point that I noted down. It was on that slide where you talked about McKinsey and that employees can lose up to 10 hours per week, right? This is quite a lot of time just searching and collecting information. So that's a lot of downtime that companies are having to pay for without any kind of return on investment. So, I think by implementing something as simple as an EDA within SAP, and you said as well, Sandy, that it can provide a return on investment within the same financial year, it's a no-brainer, right? Especially now with COVID and although I want to stop mentioning that word because it's getting tiresome. But I think the future is that we're going to be under a lot more stress and strain to deal with things like this in the future, and companies are really going to be focusing in on productivity gaps, and EDA within SAP and EDA within any system is certainly the way forward. And if we don't move in that direction, then companies will certainly lose out to their competitors. So yeah, thanks again. Let's turn it over to some questions. So Jerry, do we have anything on the system that we can answer?
Yeah, so we have some questions coming in. So until now we have 4, I guess. So one of these questions is, has the efficiency of the digital assistant been measured in regard to the traditional process in consideration of time effectiveness?
Really good question. So for 3 use cases, we have done a time study. We have found it to help improve between 25 to 28% of productivity of being able to execute a business function. So SAP best practices wise, a perfect sales order, order to cash process. What I mean by perfect sales order to cash process can be executed in 8 minutes. If there are no errors, everybody knows what it needs that they need to be doing, and it is as smooth as silk. It can be done in 8 minutes. But rarely does an order to cash process run that smooth. So if 8 minutes is your threshold point, and with the digital assistant for one of the use cases, we were able to, we obviously not 8 minutes. I'm not going to tell you that we achieved utopia here, but primarily we were able to improve it drastically by at least 18%, if I remember properly. For the sales order use case, it was approximately 18% improvement on efficiency. Funnily, in the order to cash process, the part where the digital assistant was most useful was for order entry and billing part of it. On the delivery side, it was okay because it could be run with background jobs, etc. in SAP, so it was not that useful.
Yes, so then we have another question. What is the difference between EDA versus RPAs or chatbot?
Excellent question. So EDAs are, think of it like a thinking man's RPA. RPAs traditionally are along the lines of it's like a GPS, and it does not have any intelligence. So it will tell you the route of how to go from point A to point Z, because that is the direction it kind of wants to go. And it will not have any intelligence to be able to self-correct its way through, if in case it has traffic incidents, or being able to look at what was done before in case there was an incident, and if there was an alternate route. Any of that intelligent is still being built into RPA. The advantage with a digital assistant, by nature, this is fundamentally AI based. Artificial intelligence has the ability to reason. And when you use NLP, which is natural language processing, ability to reason, being able to look at based off natural language on how we talk to each other, and being able to store that information in a secure fashion, and being able to leverage that as a knowledge base for and improve upon it every time more and more users use it, is what makes a digital assistant way more useful for an organization as opposed to an RPA script. And digital assistant can very much take up a flavor of an RPA script in the technical side of things. Like, for example, let's say basic workflow alerting, things or background job self-healing. Those are all generally RPA scripts, and they can very much be leveraged in those cases.
So we got 2 more questions. So one is here, what is the role of user privacy? Is all recorded and reported, or can a user manage what is seen by whom?
Absolutely. So whenever a digital, so this is an awesome question, because I was just doing the demo yesterday for an energy company, and their consumers, when they were primarily trying to, one of their bigger concerns was, where is all the data going to be stored, and does the consumer have the ability to see what is being stored? Answer is very much yes. So when a digital assistant comes on either chat, or it is even leveraged on the phone, it primarily first asks for permission whether that conversation can be recorded and can be leveraged. If the answer is yes, then obviously it gets warehoused. Second, each one of the users who are interacting with the digital assistant are within your enterprise already. That means they have a named enterprise profile, and a digital assistant dashboard can be built at the user level where they can look at all the things which they have applied or asked the digital assistant in general about. So they can also look at the queries which were applied and what was the response and how it was used.
Okay, so we have the last question here. What about ethics? As EDAs make decisions determined by business rules, there may be judgments that are incorrect. Who's responsible?
Awesome question. So you will need to be designing your use case based off what is necessary for your organization. If your organization does not feel comfortable in empowering EDA take the decisions, let's say self-healing of a very simple background job, right? If you are not comfortable in EDA taking the decisions, you can always set up checks and balances in the EDA's check gate process where user intervention is necessary before EDA can take action. Option number one. Option number two, let's say EDA does take action and it leads to a wrong decision. Those kind of defects can be recorded and they can be used to further improve the EDA application itself. Point number three, obviously if an error or a defect is already happening in the system, you can also have scripts which a EDA platform can x-ray based off how it is working, which the EDA developer or the lead architect can evaluate on a daily basis to see if a wrong guidance or something was given, or the person whose process is being automated has a report which he can look at every day in case he wants to overrule it post de facto. So there are multitude of ways in which you can do checks and balances.
Great, and we have two more questions that just came in. So the next one is, how accurate does an EDA approach in terms of analyzing our normal language, meaning how accurate do they understand?
Fairly good. Again, I'm not going to say that the technologies get ready and it's all the way fully mature. If it was fully mature, it would have already been there, pervasive across all organizations, right? So I would say almost 70 to 80% of it is fairly good. So there are three main challenges when you use EDA and how it recognizes your natural language. Accent or your language, etc., how you use it can be a challenge, but we are using the best available scripting which is from the leading guys, right? If you are able to interact fairly effectively with Echo from Amazon or Google or even Apple products or Siri for that matter, that means you should not have very much challenges. 80% of it generally easily gets picked up. Second, the more you use the EDA, the more it will understand your specific tone of voice, etc., and it improves upon it. So it gets more effective as your enterprise uses it more and more. So, and the third one, which I've seen is the best EDA, which I've seen is, like I said, a lot of the most famous medium where EDA is most leveraged is on chat, which is kind of not needing any speech recognition, so to speak. So chat is a very famous way to use EDA and it works very effectively.
Okay, great. So we have one more minute, so let's head for the last question. What application areas within SAP Finance, supply chain, etc., are most digital assistants being used?
Okay, oh, that's a very tough question. So I will try and answer for some of the examples of what we have seen other customers ask. There was this one CFO who wanted to leverage a digital assistant as a closing agent for his month-end closing, quarterly closing, etc., and it can act as a facilitator for closing. It can answer questions, it can open P1 tickets, help interact with IT, etc. There was a reporting vice president who leveraged it. Primarily, what he did was he put the digital assistant in his conference room and it was the executives conference room, and as part of the executive conference room, you can have a voice interaction and ask questions like, hey, tell me what my margins are, how much is my customer satisfaction rating. You know, it's more on the analytics space, which was the second case where it was leveraged. The third case, which is primarily on more on the supply chain side, it's pretty much top to bottom. Any of the use cases, a digital assistant very applicable. It can be leveraged at the buyer level, where people who are buying can provide some guidance. Production supervisors is a very good example of where a digital assistant has been leveraged. Let's say, for example, one of the machines on the shop floor goes down. So as based off IoT, it will make a call to the digital assistant, and the digital assistant will make a call to the SAP system, and it will look at all the work centers which are affected by it. And as it is able to look at all the work centers, it establishes what production orders are affected by it. And as those production orders are in turn affected, it will make a workflow email happen to a production supervisor, and in parallel generate it to the customer service rep. So all this can be, the whole loop of a machine going down can be automated with this process. So that's one example of digital assistant getting used. If you're talking more from a warehouse worker, this is a very good example. We have one tile manufacturing customer who is exploring this, is from a warehouse agent perspective. A warehouse agent where he can have the digital assistant, and he can pretty much ask simple questions like, hey, what are all the deliveries which are coming in? Yeah, or he can ask, can you please tell me what is the inventory situation in ABC bin? Or can you please trigger a transfer order or a confirmation in the system without having to log in? You know, any of these are different scenarios where a digital assistant can be used. It's very much the situation of Alice in Wonderland kind of situation. So you have to pick your use case. Digital assistant has capability to do most of these use cases, but like I said before, start small, start simple, establish a clear ROI.
Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you guys for the very nice discussion we had. So yeah, have a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.